Since the militarization of the Sarstoon River by Guatemala in 2015, free and unfettered access to Belize's southernmost tributary has been a challenge. In fact, it has been pretty darn frustrating, to be quite honest. Gone are the halcyon days when residents of nearby Barranco would venture upstream to trade or simply pass the time of day with neighbors on the other side of the waterway. Those casual experiences have been replaced by metal sharks, armed officers, and a palpable air of hostility that hangs heavily over visitors to the area. Belizeans are uninvited and setting out on an expedition here amounts to trespassing.
It's territory for Guatemala. You need the documents to navigate in this river.
No, this is Belize Island. This island is for Belize.
Sorry, no, it's a island.
Huh?
No, this island.
Yes, no, this is for Belize. You are in Belize territory right now.
That's all right.
You should not be here. You have permission to be here? Do you have permission to be in Belize?
This is Guatemala.
History has, from time immemorial, taught us that the sovereign territory of Belize covers everything terrestrially, from Proud Rio Hondo to Old Sarstoon. The country shares a border in the north with Mexico. It is also bounded on the west as well as the south by Guatemala, and to the east by the expanse of the Caribbean Sea. But with the ramping up of military presence in these parts, freedom of access to Sarstoon and her virgin namesake have been severely restricted.
We are visiting our island. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to be here.
Do you have permission to be in Belize?
Excuse me?
Do you have permission to be in Belize?
Do you have permission to be in Guatemala?
This is Belize.
In Guatemala.
So what are we doing here? Ahead of the April 10th I.C.J. referendum, we decided to visit the farthest point south to test the waters, in a manner of speaking, to prove that the status quo and conflict between both countries over this controversial location persists. The GAF, as they are called, attempted to thwart our passage upriver. It wasn't until our vessel was joined by a coastguard launch that we were able to encircle Sarstoon Island with military escort from them. The journey around the 100-acre landmass was tense. The Coast Guard officers were outnumbered and outgunned by the Guatemalan armed forces, but their steely resolve was on full display and deserves commendation.
Well, it was very curious that we were on Belizean waters and Guatemalan military officers came over and said we were in Guatemalan waters. It was amazing. I didn't expect that would have happened out there. And to see two military boats as opposed to just one that usually comes out there from the Guatemalan side. Luckily, we got to experience the actual B.D.F. And the Coast Guard in action, and they came to our side and showed us that it is Belizean waters so far. I'm gratified to have seen that.
Dr. Joseph Palacio is a son of the soil and has returned home to Barranco in retirement. His perspective on what has taken place at the Sarstoon in the broader context of Toledo District being neglected speaks to a dire need for the establishment of a protocol.
Unfortunately, Toledo remains the forgotten district. And I say that deliberately and unfortunately. And because of the proximity between us and Guatemala, there is a need to work out a modus operandi. There has to be some solution.
That solution may or may not come, depending on the result of the April 10th I.C.J. referendum. For activist Will Maheia, the experience today only serves to concrete his decision.
I go back to a few years ago when Lisa Schumann came with us on this very trip, and upon her return or sometime after, she said that, look, we owe nothing less to Belize and that we should not be dealing with Guatemala until they begin to behave like a good neighbor. And so far, they're still not behaving like a good neighbor. So, I mean, I think that Lisa Schumann pointed out that they were not a good neighbor and we should not be dealing with them until then, when they begin to behave like a good neighbor. Clearly today, they were not that good neighbor, and that's another reason why Belizeans should say no to the I.C.J.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.